Class, this is a walkthrough of homework number 2, the calendar. I'll start by showing you a picture of what I'd like to see in phase 1. Here is a question where the user is being asked for the month and 4-digit year of a calendar. I input January 2018, and then it prints out the nice header of the month, the header of the days of the week, and then all days of the month. So that's phase 1 of 4 phases. I've listed the 4 phases here. First phase is to just make it work for April of 2018 because April happens to start April 1st on a Sunday and makes the calendar very easy to produce. And then the second phase is to produce it for any month. Then phase 3 is to design it with code, and phase 4 is to actually complete that code for the graphics. So I'm going to go through a walkthrough of what we're going to be doing in these steps. So here I've included a text file that has the calendar output. I've mentioned several helper routines, which I will show more in depth. And here is a file that you're going to use to import. We'll go through that in a second. So let's just go ahead and walk through this phase 1 required work. So let's go to Eclipse, and we're going to create a new project called Calendars. Notice the S. I'm going to create a new class, Calendars, again, with no package and generating a main. If you guys haven't been playing with packages, you don't need to worry, but some students have been selecting a package. So let's go File, New, Java Project, and I will type Calendars. I personally like to keep everything in one folder, and this is going to be enough to get us started. Then we need to go File, New, Class, and it's again going to be Calendars, and let's go ahead and construct it with a main. And again, some of you have been putting packages in here. Don't put packages because it makes it difficult for me to actually run your code when you specify a package. That should be enough. Okay, so we've got a main just like hello world. Let's go back to our instructions. So we're going to open the calendar helpers.txt and copy and paste it into the class. And we also have to import. So let's go grab the calendar helpers. Depending on how your computer is set up, it may open it in different ways. I'll show you what it looks like here. Here is a helper routine print month that you have. This is really the bulk of the code. This is what you will be filling in. Here's a helper routine that you will be writing called center string, which centers a string very much like pad string that you did in Practice It. Here's 2 completely written helpers for you. One called days in the month, which helps calculate for a month like April 2018 how many days are in there. And then this one is called day of the week, where it will it actually only works for the first of the month. I've actually hard coded that there. So, but it finds out for April 2018. January, the 1st of April 2018, what day of the week does that start? Where number 1 is a Sunday and number 7 is a Saturday, just like we have in the US. But also note that that's not true in Europe. In Europe, most of their calendars start on a Monday. Okay, and then padded is another function that's completely written for you. Again, a lot like pad string. Okay, this one is already written for you. Do study this one carefully. Okay, so anyways, what I'm going to do is I'm going to see if I can download this file. So depending on how your system's set up, it might be a little different. I'm going to copy all this. Let's go over and paste it into the bottom of the file. So before the end of the file, I'm going to paste this in. Okay. And you'll notice we get a little error here saying the method must return a type string. So we got to finish that later. But what I was pointing out earlier is that we must place this line at the top of our file, import. Okay, import Java. That enables us to be able to use the Java classes that are used in Gregorian calendar and also calendar. That's why we had to rename it calendars. And there's also, it's not in the code yet, but there's also a class month. Okay, let's close that and go back to our instructions. So we've now completed, I think, the first 4 steps. Okay, And just out of curiosity, what happens if I click run on this thing right now? It's probably not going to do anything. I think it actually did it. It just didn't do anything. Like if let's do the sys out controls. That should have. There we go. Control space. It's a shortcut. Hello, calendar. And let's run that. Yes. So it is running. It's just not doing anything because our main doesn't do anything. Okay, but at least we have a working program. And I hope you all remember that I always want you to have a working program. Never rip up your program and end up with something that doesn't work anymore. That's the worst feeling in the world. Okay, so we've completed steps 1 through 4. Okay, step 5, fill in the function header for center string following the other examples. So here is center string, and the header, right? We have to fill in the function header. The header needs to be filled in here. Actually, we'll get rid of that first line because we don't really want that line there. How are we going to fill it in? Well, it's going to be just like this one here. Okay, so I'm going to say returns something. Okay, I'm going to say what are my input and what are my outputs. Doesn't matter. I mean, I noticed that I didn't use S. It doesn't really matter. Okay. The important point is that you do document what your inputs and outputs are. And this is using a very classical header format that I've worked with for many, many years in the industry. In this case, they had an imports here, but we don't need an imports. But you need to explain what this function does, okay? And to understand what it does, you should look at this carefully to see how it centers a string, okay? So that's going to be step number 5. Okay, number 6, create the code for center string. Okay, this will be similar to padded or pad string. Okay, so if you haven't already figured out, it inputs a string S and it has a width N. Okay, and then it's going to pad a certain number of spaces on the left and a certain number of spaces on the right to pad it in the middle. Okay, so let's take a look at an example down here of padded, which has a number and then a width. Okay, and by the way, you can change this name here. It was a poor choice of names to use N. I mean, that should really be width. And so what is it doing here? It starts with a string that is null, and then it adds in N. Okay, you can do this in a separate step. They did it in one. That's fine. Then if I was you, I would definitely make sure you put comments in your code, okay, as to what it's doing. But what these guys are doing is they set up a loop. They loop over the length of the string. So for example, or the number, I should say. So there could be the number is 1 or 2 digits. Okay, so the string, so this becomes, I'm just going to show you this. Don't put in code the comments like this. I'm just going to show you. What this generates is, for example, the string 1 or the string 20. Okay, so the length of this is 1 or the length of this is 2, and then it's going to loop until the width. So the width here is 2 or the width is 5. Okay, it's going to go through there and it's going to prepend a space to the string. Okay, so there's 2 things to notice here that you may not be 100% familiar with. One is that we are operating on the string itself. This probably isn't going to help, but I'm just going to emphasize. No, actually, I can't do that. So it's operating on itself. It takes the string that starts out, for example, 1, okay, and that it generates a new string which has a space stuck in front of it, like that. Okay. Now, this is not the same string here and here. It actually takes the string, quote, 1, okay, and it generates a whole new string, space 1. It's not maybe the most important detail for you at this point. I just wanted to point out that strings are immutable, just like you learned. Okay, it's generating a new string. This is actually a terribly inefficient way to build a string, and this is one of the downsides of Java in general, is that programmers write this kind of code without thinking for a moment about how inefficient this is. This is really, really inefficient. But for learning purposes, this is fine. Okay, so that's padded. So let's go back up and take what's the difference between padded and center string. Well, one, we're taking a string to start. That should be pretty easy to figure out. You don't have to convert a number to a string. You have the string. And you're going to have to pad it on the left, just like padded, okay? But then you also have to pad it on the right, okay? And also pay attention to how many characters are on the left and right, because you don't always have the same number. In this case, it's the same number on the left and right. In this case, it is not. And you have to figure out what do you have to do in order to make that happen. Okay, so that's number 6. Then for just illustration purposes, I'll just do this. I'm going to just pad it with one string, one character in the front, plus S, plus one character in the back, just for illustration purposes. Okay, so number 7, fill in the function header for print month. Okay, so where's print month? Okay, so just like I showed you here, you're going to provide that header up here. Okay, so what's it taking? It's taking a year and a month. It's pretty obvious what those do. And then it's going to print out the calendar. And do think carefully, what would be the best thing to put here to really illustrate what's going on very quickly. Okay, think about what we did in homework 1. All right. Okay, and then we're going to fill in the main to call print month on April 2018. Okay, so in main here, this line was just temporary. I'm going to get rid of that with Control D, and instead I'm going to call print month with, I'm going to let you figure out what do I have to put here to tell it the year. Oh, that it's doing all sorts of fancy things. So there's something there for the year, there's something there for the month. Okay, make sure you comment what you're doing. And I've chosen this month because it makes it very easy because it starts on Sunday. Okay, so how do we do this? We're gonna build the month of April using center string. So what I'm gonna do is we're gonna call center string. Yeah, so we're now working on print month here itself. Okay, so we're gonna print this month. So you don't have to do this, but I'm just going to go ahead and create a string month. Quotes. Okay. And then I'm going to call center string on this. So note that I am again doing this thing where I pass the string in. It's actually creating a new string and reassigning it here. Okay, you could do it with a different string, doesn't matter. Okay, and then I'm going to print that out. So I'm going to do okay. Then I have to print this days of the week here, right? So if I were you, I would make sure you go to the calendar output. And let's copy. You know what? This is not going to be easy doing it from here. Let's actually download it and open it. Okay. I'm going to copy that whole month there. Okay. I think that's a carriage return there that we don't actually want. Okay, so I'm not sure if that's actually right. You'd have to check it in your output comparison. Let's go back. Okay. To our instructions. Okay, now write a loop to draw the days of the month from 1 to 30. Okay. So make your comment here. Okay, I'm not going to finish comment because I want you to figure out what the comment's going to be, right? So day equals 1 till day. I hope I'm not telling you anything you don't already know. If you don't know how to do this, then you really need to work on your loops. Okay, so I'm going to loop over the days, and I'm going to print the day with the appropriate padding, taking advantage of the padded helper. Okay, so I am not going to use the padded helper, but you have to. Okay, you need to figure out how to do that. And I'm going to do, I need to print the day. So again, you need to figure out how to pad that properly. For now, I'm just going to put a space there just so it's not totally crazy. And I tell you that after you print Saturday, you need to print a line break using this code here. How do I know it's Saturday? Okay, so I print that. I put this code in here. So you've not used if. Please do not ever use advanced expressions like if until you've been told how to do them. But I'm specifically giving it to you in this case here. Okay, so comment here as to what's going on. Question is, what is this expression to print a new line? And if you look carefully, I explain. Okay, so the function mod actually is excellent for this. We use it when we pull out digits from a decimal digit because x mod 10 is equal to 0 every 10 numbers, assuming we start from 1. So if we go 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, 7, 8, 9, 10, then every 10 numbers you get 10 x mod 10 is 0. That's not true if we started with 1, right? Because then it would be 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, 7, 8, 9, 10. We actually have to go to 11 before we get to x mod 10 is equal to 0 every 10 numbers. I mean, maybe that's confusing. But for this simple example, this expression here, if the day mod 7 is equal to 0, that will be true if the calendar starts on Sunday. So I'm just going to put that in here, and it just so happens that day is the variable that I used. So that'll break it. Okay, so let's see what we get if we just run this. Okay, I got an error here because center string, yeah, okay, so I didn't actually do this correctly. Let's center string month with, let's just say 20, okay, that's not correct. You're going to have to figure out what the correct number is. And I've got an error. And, oh yeah, that place where I just typed in all those X's, yeah, that's not going to work. So I'm going to put in totally wrong numbers, but it'll satisfy the compiler. You guys have to figure out what the right numbers are. Okay, so we've okay, it's not println, it's print. Probably saw that. Okay, so this is the right overall thing that it's supposed to print, but totally wrong formatting because I did not bother to go through all this total steps. But you can see that it prints out days to 7, to 14, to 21, to 28, okay? And so again, let's take a look at what this code is doing, okay? So up here in phase 2, it's actually going to print out a prompt to the user. It's going to print out this prompt up here, okay? And then it's going to use scanner to get an input, okay? I'm skipping all that and I'm just hard coding it. You're going to have to figure out for April, but I just put 5.5, okay? Then it's calling print month. Print month gets in here, and then you're going to have to figure out how to build the month of April. That's part of phase 2, okay, from the month that it is being passed in. And here, I'll just take a quick look at that code, that hint to tell you. Okay, so here in print month, you're going to have to use the helpers days in month and day of week to determine the number of days in the month and the start day. Okay, so I think I showed you, oh yeah, right here. So to get the name, there's this piece of code right here. Just use it as is, don't try to understand it. But if you use this code here, it'll generate April from the number 4. Excuse me. And so that's going to build your string. You're going to have to call center string on it. Okay. Then you're going to print that out, and you can print out these days of the week. That's I'm dead sure that's not the right spacing, but you guys will figure it out. Because let's just go over here for a second. If I take a look. Huh. I guess that first row isn't actually doing, there should be a couple spaces off here. So you notice these spaces? Those spaces are important for the loop over the days. It's not really important for up here, so I guess I didn't worry about it. But Okay, so print this out, and then you're going to do it over this loop. Okay, so right now we're doing 1 to 30. That's not the same for every month. So February, if we called, go back to here, if we call days in month on February, we should get 28 days, okay? And 30 days, half September, blah, 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 blah. It'll calculate the right number of days if we call that. And then here, okay, depending on which day of the month the first of the month is. So in January, the first of the month, let's go back up here. For January, the first of the month, day of week of January 1st, 2018 is not 1, but 2, okay? So when the day of the month is 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, okay, you need to do something different. First, you're going to have to print some blank spaces to start. Second, you're going to have to break at a different time. Still every 7 days. So you're going to still use mod 7. But the question is, what are you going to be using instead of day? Okay, you can't just use the day. You need to modify the day based on the day of week that the first of this particular month, January 1st, 2018, for example, occurs. Okay, and if you draw out a simple chart of what happens when the day is 1, as it is for April 2018, what happens when the day is 2 for January of 2018, what happens when the day is 3, and where do those breaks go? Okay, so for example, I'll start you off here. So for day equals 1, okay, we want to break at 7, 14, 21, 28, okay? What happens when day is equal to 2? Now, you don't have to run any code. You just got to look at a calendar or just figure it out, okay? Day equals 2. Let's go back to January. It's going to break on the 6th, 13th, 20th, 27th, okay? What happens if the day is equal to 3? Okay, all the way down till day is equal to 7. Okay, where are the breaks at? Okay, this is very much like we did our loop expressions. Okay, you take a look at this, you take a look at this, and then you figure out what does that make this expression here have to be, so that every 7 we are going to print a new line. Okay. So let's go back to our instructions and see what else. Okay, so we have worked on number 8 and we've worked on number 9 to do the loop. Okay, so now let's go down and take a look at what is due for the submission. What to submit. Okay, a lot of people have been failing to read this carefully. Your Java file, it must be called calendar. If you call it Joe's calendar, it will not run when I go to run it. Okay, it's got to be called calendar. Okay. Second, a text file. For phase 1, I want it to be the month of April 2018, matching exactly what I passed in, what I gave you guys in this. Let's go back up to the top. Not the April 2018. Back up the top here. Okay, it's got to match this output. And to help you match that output, I've given you a reference to an online tool. Where's that online tool? Got to go back down here. Oh, where is it? I don't see where it is. But I gave you a reference to an online tool. Actually, I think it was at the very beginning where I gave you. Yes, here's an online diff tool. I'll just jump over there for a second. So you can type in 2 things. Paste them in, and then when you find the difference, it will actually highlight the difference. It's maybe a tiny bit difficult to figure out what the exact difference is, but you'll get used to it. Okay, so let's go back down to what to submit. Make sure you read it. It's different for every phase as to what you're supposed to submit. Okay, but read carefully and make sure you submit the correct things. Let's take a quick look through what phase 2 and 3 and 4 are. So phase 1 was hard-coded for just 1 month of the year. Phase 2 is going to be for all months of the year. So you're going to have to use days and month and day of week for, well, first of all, you're going to have to prompt the user and use a scanner to get the month and year. Second, you're going to have to actually pass those in to print month. Third, you're going to have to use these helpers to determine that February starts on, I think it'd be actually I don't know what day of the week it starts, but I know there's 28 days in it. Okay, you're going to have to build the string, like I said, month of April by using this function here. Okay, you're going to have to use, so you've already got a loop for all the days of the week, hopefully. So instead, what you got to figure out is what happens if the day of week for the first starts on a different day other than Sunday. Okay. Then once you get that all tested and it works for any given month of the year, then I want you to replace your code with a loop through all 12 months so that you output something that looks like this. Okay. Notice how the 31st ends here. The first ends here. Oh, it looks like I've got a bug. I'll have to fix this. I'm not sure what's going on there, but that 1.2 shouldn't be there clearly. Okay, so but all of these dates need to line up so that the end of one month and the start of the next month line up exactly. Okay. So let's go back. So that's phase 2. You're going to make sure that every single month of the year works correctly. Phase 3, you're going to draw graphics. So instead of this character-based output here, you're going to actually draw this in graphics. So you're going to use draw text to draw the text. You're going to draw rects or lines to draw around the month. Okay, and then just like in a hanging wall calendar, I want a nice pretty picture above the month. Okay, but for phase 3, what you're going to do is just design it. Okay, you can either draw it on paper or you can use something like Paint and draw it. But I need all the XY coordinates, not for absolutely every point, but you need to tell me where you're going to start drawing for all the different things. I gave you some specifications here. Phase 4 is you're going to then code that up. Okay. And let's see, also I gave you a couple of references. One is Eclipse Debugging Basics. So you are going to start needing to be able to actually debug. So far you've been learning how to print statements, but you really want to be able to stop your program at any particular point and look at what the variables are. That's going to save you so much time in the future. And I've also given you a list of Eclipse shortcuts, things like typing sysout and control space. That's going to save you a bunch of time. None of those shortcuts are required, but I guarantee you it's going to save you a bunch of time. So I've walked you through and spoon-fed phase 1. Okay, I'm not going to spoon-feed you phase 2, 3, and 4. Okay, that is going to have to be on your own. Each homework is going to be a little bit harder than the last one in terms of steps. But please make sure that you stick with the dates and you submit things on time, because otherwise you're just going to fall farther and farther behind. The reason I've given you 4 phases because I know that if I only gave you one due date, everyone would wait until the last day. Okay, so this is going to force you to get to the right point at 4 different points. All right, so good luck on your calendars.